Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. Our craft is chock full of the most simple projects that create the most useful products. We've done an axe sheath, we've done an axe handle. How about an axe ring? If we have a sheath that doesn't have a belt loop on it, this is the best way to go, particularly if we need an axe or mallet or hammer close at hand. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com, or check below. We've got links there. Going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So let's jump over to our pattern table, get started. We'll look at a digital pick here shortly, but let's take a look at what we're doing. Right here, that's all there is. We're going to take a strap and bend it back on itself. But right there, that's a sturdy, durable project. I would not hesitate to put my full weight on that. We've got two patterns here. If we just need an axe ring for the job site, we can do it. But for ours, let's add a little backing behind the O-ring. Protect us from the axe from us, but also it's going to give it a little extra body. Now, on our O-ring, we're going to go with a 2-inch O-ring. This is not going to fit the haft on a full-size axe. But in all honesty, I'm not going to wear that on my belt. Simply too heavy, but that handle is going to trip me up. Okay, so over to our digital pick. For our basic, we're going 9.5 long by 1 1/4 wide. We're coming in 1/2 inch from either end. For the loop around our O-ring, we're going 2.5 inches. For our belt loop, 6 inches. On the bottom pattern, exactly the same dimensions. We're just adding a little extra distance there, and then we're going to clip our corners. We can leave that right where it is, but what we can do, let's take our pattern, let's fold it on our center line. Now, with those clipped corners, we can trim those down and we can get that almost perfectly round. But the good part about it, if it's not absolutely perfect, it is symmetrical. It's going to look like it was designed that way. Okay, let's step over to our cutting table, get started. We've got the perfect leather for this project. This is our Water Buffalo Crazy Horse. It's an 8 to 9 ounce, but it's a pull-up leather. Now, if that's not familiar to you, it just means that the tannery has added both oil and dye. But the oil is a lighter color than the dye. So when we bend it, a different color pulls up, a lighter color pulls up. But it's a rustic look. Perfect for our axe ring, because this is going to accompany me on every camp out. So let's start right here. Now, we can absolutely go with a heavier weight leather, but if we do, I would suggest let's add a little extra distance to the bend around the O-ring. So let's trace this in. And let's mark for our punch holes while we're here. And there we go. Well, finally, an easy leather to see. Good. So let's cut this out. And again, new blade, sharp blade every time. Let's just do our best to hit that scribed line. Good, we've got that. Now, it's going to be hard to cut around this. Let's don't hesitate simply to cut a piece of leather out. That will make this much easier to cut. And there we go. Good. Well, that doesn't look bad. Now, if it's not perfect, we can always come back in, and again with a sharp knife, we can trim little points off. But that looks good thus far. Let's step over to our punch table. We're going to use Chicago screws or screw posts to secure our axe ring. Now, typically with a revolving punch, the largest tube is just a little small for a Chicago screw. We can do it. But if that's all we have, we can always take an awl or even a nail sink simply to open that hole up a little bit. Since I've got the drive punch, the Master Tool drive punch, I'm going to go with a 3/16 inch. Now, a little bit larger hole will also help if our holes don't line up perfectly. That gives us a little room to work with. Okay, back to our cutting table. That little tail right there is making me crazy. We've got to get that off. We'll bevel it off, but it's making me nuts. So we're going to add a bevel and a groove to this leather. Well, it's not going to look great to begin with. You'll see what I'm talking about. Now, a pull-up leather. One of the great things about this, I can put a scratch across it, rub my finger back across that, and it disappears. That's the oils covering that up. So with a groove line, I'm going to set this at 1/8 of an inch. But you notice when we add a groove, we're all yellow or orange on that edge. When we come back with a bevel, now that whole edge is orange. To me, that doesn't look great, but let's do this. Let's take our finger and rub back over that. Yeah, now we have a clear distinction between edge and groove. So let's groove all the way around. Good. So now let's come in with our number 2 edger, and I'm going to edge front and back. Now we're going to slick this. It's not going to slick like a natural veg tan, but nonetheless, we're going to get a good edge. We've got that, so let's turn that back over. Let's rub our finger down our edge. Well, actually, that looks pretty good. In fact, that's one of my favorite looks, rustic yet finished. Now this leather, it's not going to take a top coat, not tanned to take a top coat, but we're going to use a leather balm on our edges. Like I said, it's not going to slick as well as a good veg tan, but nonetheless, it's going to give us a good edge. Gum trag, going to work just as well. So let's add some of this to our edges and our edges only. Good, we've got a good coat of leather balm on that. Okay, now let's take a slicker, and I'm going to use the edge of my table to help out, but I'm going to slick all the way around. Let's see how good of an edge we can get on this. Now, oftentimes when we slick, if we don't have a perfect cut, sometimes that's going to smooth that down a little bit, make that look pretty good. Now, I can see a good slick on that. The camera may not be able to pick that up, but the point is, more, it's to the feel. I can feel that edge. It feels good. Okay, let's step over to our pattern table, knock this together. We're going to go with an antique nickel finish for our hardware, but at Weaver, we've got multiple finishes, both in our screws and our O-rings. I almost want to see this with a copper, an antique copper. That would be beautiful, but I like the contrast between the antique nickel and the rustic look on the leather. On our Chicago screws, we're going to go with a 3/8 of an inch. 8 to 9 is typically about 1/8 of an inch thick. We're going to have 3 plies here. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's going to be tough to bend this leather around this O-ring and get 3 plies in here. But if we go to a little extra trouble, that simply means this is going to last another 10 years. Now, let's start with just a little of our white glue on our posts, because we're going to be holding this down shortly. Let's go ahead and make sure we've got glue on those. Now, I don't want to necessarily weld those down. I just want to tack them in. Somewhere down the road, probably not likely on this project, but somewhere down the road we may have to replace something where we put in Chicago screws. I don't want those welded in there. Okay, so we can go about this 2 ways. We can go with our belt loop, top grain out, flesh side out on our oval, or we simply bend reverse and we've got the opposite of that. But let's go with our top grain out on our belt loop. That may be confusing, but you'll see where we're going with that. So let's start right here, drop our screws in from the face on our second set of holes. Don't forget our O-ring. Now let's come over to the edge of our table. So this loop has room to hang off the edge. There we go, let's flip that over, good. Now, we're going to struggle here. Again, this is going to be tough, but let's get to our edge and let's get our screws to come through that leather. Now, here's a good point. Because we punch from the face, the back side of that is going to be somewhat more sheer. We can always take our awl and come from the back side and work our way through. Good. Okay, now let's try to bend this around and get that on our screws. Good, we've got that. Okay, now let's bring this piece around and let's press that down. Good. Now I can see my screws. The best thing about the screws from Weaver, we saw that coming, didn't we? But our screws have an Allen wrench slot. All the difference in the world. If you've ever tried to tighten Chicago screws down with a screwdriver, it can be done absolutely, but that makes all the difference in the world. Well, there we go. A simple yet sturdy, useful project. How cool is that? Another simple yet highly useful project made with leather. I think that is going in my camp box today, and I bet this is going to outlast all of us. But I hope your axe ring looks good, fits well, and I hope you have a great time making it. Good luck with your projects.